What if I told you that something is happening inside your skull right now, something invisible and urgent, and that most people over 60 have no idea it's quietly failing them every single night? Not because of bad luck, not because of genetics, not because of anything they did wrong consciously or deliberately, but because of what they ate or didn't eat before they went to bed. That might sound strange at first. It might even sound too simple to be true. But by the time you finish reading this, you're going to understand your brain in a way most people never will. And more importantly, you're going to know exactly what to do about it starting tonight. Let's start with a question nobody ever asks. What does your brain actually do while you sleep? Most people assume the brain shuts down, powers off, rests like a computer in sleep mode. But that couldn't be further from the truth. While you're lying there completely unconscious, your brain is running one of the most sophisticated biological programs ever discovered. It's cleaning itself, repairing itself, rebuilding the very connections that allow you to remember your grandchildren's names, to think clearly in a conversation, to feel sharp and present and like yourself in the morning. And here is the terrifying part. After the age of 60, this entire system begins to break down slowly, silently, and for most people without a single warning sign until the damage is already done and has been accumulating for years. But here is something that almost nobody is talking about. The foods you eat, specifically the ones you consume in the hours before sleep, have a direct and measurable effect on whether this repair process works or fails completely. Not supplements, not medications, real whole foods that most of us have access to right now, today, at any grocery store. And there are 5 in particular that scientists have found to be remarkably powerful for the aging brain. But before we get to those 5 foods, you need to understand what's actually happening inside the aging brain at night. Because once you understand the mechanism, the solution won't just make sense. It will feel urgent. It will feel like something you cannot afford to ignore for a single day longer. Deep inside your brain, there is a system that was only discovered relatively recently. For decades, scientists knew the brain produced waste products, metabolic byproducts, misfolded proteins, toxic compounds that accumulate through the day just from normal thinking and functioning. What they didn't know was how the brain got rid of them. The answer, when they finally found it, was extraordinary. During deep sleep, cerebrospinal fluid essentially floods through channels in the brain, washing out the accumulated debris the way a river clears sediment after a storm. This system has a name now, the glymphatic system. And what it removes every single night is the difference between a clear, functioning mind and one slowly drowning in its own waste. Among the most dangerous of those waste products is a protein called beta amyloid. You may have heard of it. It is directly linked to Alzheimer's disease. In a healthy sleeping brain, the glymphatic system flushes it out efficiently night after night. But in a brain that isn't getting enough deep sleep, or in a brain that lacks the nutrients to run this process properly, beta amyloid builds up night after night, week after week, year after year. And here's the part that should stop you completely in your tracks. This buildup begins long before any symptoms appear, long before the forgetting starts, long before the fog sets in. By the time someone actually notices the problem, the accumulation has often been happening for over a decade. 10 years of silent damage. 10 years of nights that could have gone differently. So you might be wondering, what does any of this have to do with what you eat for dinner? The answer is everything. Absolutely everything. The glymphatic system doesn't run on willpower. It doesn't run on good intentions or positive thinking or wishful hoping. It runs on biological fuel, specific fatty acids that maintain the integrity of brain cell membranes, specific vitamins that keep the nerve pathways insulated and functioning properly, specific minerals that regulate the electrical activity in neurons, specific compounds that control inflammation and oxidative damage, both of which interfere with deep sleep and therefore with everything the glymphatic system is trying to do. Without those nutrients, the cleaning system slows, the toxins accumulate, and the brain that wakes up the next morning is slightly, just slightly worse than the one that went to sleep the night before. Now multiply that by 365 nights a year. Multiply it by 5 years, 10 years. That is how cognitive decline happens. Not in a dramatic overnight collapse, not in some sudden event you could point to and identify, but in a slow, quiet, nutrient-deprived erosion that almost nobody connects to their dinner plate until it's far too late to wish they had known sooner. But you are reading this now, and that changes everything. There is something else happening in that same window of decline that makes the situation even more urgent than most people appreciate: inflammation. The word gets thrown around so casually in health conversations that it has almost lost its meaning for many people. But inside the aging brain, inflammation is not a vague concept. It is a measurable, destructive force that directly undermines every single repair mechanism we have been discussing. Chronic low-grade neuroinflammation interferes with the glymphatic system's ability to clear waste. It degrades the quality of deep sleep, which further impairs glymphatic function in a worsening feedback loop. It accelerates the breakdown of the very synaptic connections the brain is trying to strengthen during memory consolidation, and it damages the mitochondria inside neurons, robbing brain cells of the energy they need to do anything at all. Inflammation after 60 is not inevitable, but it is nearly universal in people who are not actively supplying the specific anti-inflammatory compounds their brains require. This is the hidden thread running through everything we are about to discuss. Every food on this list targets inflammation as part of a larger and more complete strategy than any single mechanism could address alone. Memory isn't the only thing happening in the brain at night, and this is where the story gets even more fascinating and more hopeful. While the glymphatic system does its cleaning, another equally important process is running in parallel. Your brain is consolidating everything you experience during the day. Every conversation, every face, every piece of information you tried to absorb or remember. During sleep, the brain doesn't just file these things away randomly like papers stuffed into a drawer. It strengthens the connections between neurons that matter and prunes the ones that don't. It transfers information from short-term holding areas into deep, permanent, long-term storage. And it does this through a process that is exquisitely sensitive to the chemical environment inside your brain. Neurotransmitters, synaptic strength, the electrical conductivity of neural pathways, all of it depends entirely on what you gave your brain to work with before you closed your eyes. Here is the cliffhanger that nobody prepares you for. After 60, this entire system, the cleaning, the consolidating, the repairing, becomes measurably less efficient. Melatonin production drops, which disrupts the timing of deep sleep cycles and prevents the brain from ever fully reaching the stages where the most critical repair happens. Neurotransmitter levels fall, which weakens memory consolidation, so that the work of the day partially dissolves instead of being properly stored. Inflammation increases throughout the brain, which interferes with the glymphatic process at the cellular level. Nutrient absorption in the gut deteriorates significantly, which means even people eating relatively well may not actually be getting what their brain needs from the food they consume. And mitochondria, the tiny energy-producing structures inside every single brain cell, begin to malfunction, leaving neurons with less power to do their nightly repair work than they desperately need. These are not small, isolated problems. They are deeply interconnected failures in a system that was already running close to its limits. And they compound each other in ways that dramatically accelerate the overall decline. But, and this is the turn you've been waiting for, none of this is inevitable. The research is unambiguous on this point. Lifestyle and diet interventions can slow, halt, and in some cases, meaningfully reverse these processes, even in adults well into their 70s and 80s. The brain is not a fixed machine that simply wears out and cannot be helped. It is a living, responsive, adaptable organ that changes based on what you give it. And the 5 foods we're about to discuss are among the most powerful tools ever identified for giving the aging brain exactly what it needs to do its nightly work with full force. The first food is sardines. Small, humble, easy to overlook, and almost shockingly powerful for brain health when you understand what they contain. Sardines are loaded with 2 specific omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA, that are not just beneficial for the brain, but are structurally essential to it. DHA, in particular, makes up a significant portion of the brain's cell membranes. Without adequate DHA, those membranes become stiff and rigid over time, which progressively impairs communication between neurons. Think carefully about what that means for someone trying to consolidate memories at night. The signals that need to travel efficiently between neurons are moving through a barrier that has become less flexible, less permeable, less capable of facilitating the precise electrical and chemical exchanges that memory consolidation requires. And because the body cannot produce meaningful amounts of DHA on its own, you must eat it. Sardines provide it in a form the body absorbs exceptionally well, better than most other sources available. But that's not all sardines bring to the table. They are one of the richest dietary sources of vitamin B12, a nutrient that becomes increasingly difficult to absorb with age, and that is absolutely critical for maintaining the myelin sheath that surrounds and protects nerve fibers throughout the brain and nervous system. When myelin degrades, which it does progressively in people who are B12 deficient, the nerves become vulnerable. Signal transmission slows noticeably, and the brain begins to lose the precision and speed that clear, confident thinking requires. Sardines address this directly and powerfully. They also have one significant advantage over larger, oily fish. Because they are small and low on the food chain, they accumulate far less mercury than salmon, tuna, or other popular fish, making them safe to eat multiple times per week without any concern. 2 to 3 times a week is the ideal frequency, and the brain, if it could thank you for anything, might start there. The second food is one that most people think of simply as a trendy breakfast item or a restaurant luxury: avocado. Rich, creamy, endlessly versatile, and sitting at the intersection of almost every mechanism the brain needs to function well during the night. Avocados are extraordinarily high in monounsaturated fatty acids, the same category of healthy fat found in olive oil, which support the structural integrity of brain cell membranes and meaningfully improve blood flow to the brain over time. Blood flow matters more than most people ever realize. The brain is only 2% of your body weight, but it consumes roughly 20% of your entire oxygen supply every single minute of every day. Every milliliter of blood reaching your brain is carrying glucose, oxygen, and critical nutrients to neurons that are trying to perform complex biochemical work around the clock. When blood flow is impaired, as it is in people with arterial stiffness, elevated blood pressure, or chronic low-grade inflammation, the brain is essentially operating in a state of continuous, quiet deprivation. Avocado helps reverse that pattern steadily and measurably. Beyond its remarkable fat content, avocado is packed with folate, which plays a critical role in a process called methylation. Methylation sounds highly technical, but its real-world effects are deeply practical and immediately relevant. It regulates the production of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. It controls gene expression inside brain cells, determining which repair genes get switched on and which protective pathways get activated. It determines how efficiently the brain can repair damaged DNA. A brain with adequate folate runs its neurotransmitter systems and gene regulation cleanly and efficiently. A brain without enough folate begins running them erratically, with consequences that surface as mood instability, cognitive slowing, disrupted sleep, and gradual memory impairment. Half an avocado per day is enough to make a genuine difference, and when eaten with dinner, it provides a slow-releasing source of fat that carries fat-soluble nutrients through the night, exactly when the brain is working hardest and needs them most. The third food is something you might already be eating, but probably not in the right form, the right amount, or at the right time of day: walnuts. Of all the nuts available, walnuts are uniquely and specifically positioned for brain health, not only because of their remarkable omega-3 content, but because of a specific cellular process they support. Most people have never encountered this word. That is unfortunate, because it may be one of the most important concepts in all of brain aging science. Mitophagy is the cellular process by which damaged, dysfunctional mitochondria are identified, tagged, and removed from the cell so that healthy, efficient mitochondria can take their place. In young, healthy brains, mitophagy runs efficiently and continuously. Old, damaged mitochondria get cleared out promptly before they can generate oxidative damage or drain the cell's resources. The fourth food is spinach, And if there is one food on this entire list that functions as a master control system for everything else happening in the brain, it is this one. Spinach operates on so many biological levels simultaneously that it is almost difficult to describe without sounding like exaggeration. But the science is there, and it is genuinely impressive. Spinach is rich in folate, which we touched on in the context of avocado, but spinach delivers it in quantities significant enough to meaningfully shift neurotransmitter balance and accelerate DNA repair in brain cells. It contains magnesium, one of the most consistently underappreciated minerals in the entire landscape of brain health. Magnesium regulates the NMDA receptor, a crucial gateway structure in neurons that sits at the center of learning and long-term memory formation. It also promotes deep, genuinely restorative sleep by calming an overactive nervous system and reducing the background neural noise that prevents the brain from descending into the deep sleep stages where the most important repair occurs. In people who are magnesium deficient, and such deficiency is extraordinarily common in adults over 60, the entire sleep architecture becomes disturbed in ways that directly and measurably compromise both the glymphatic cleaning process and overnight memory consolidation. But spinach doesn't stop there. It contains nitrates, natural compounds the body converts into nitric oxide, a signaling molecule that causes blood vessels throughout the brain to relax and dilate, improving cerebral blood flow, increasing oxygen delivery, and enhancing glucose uptake in neurons that are working intensively to repair themselves. It contains vitamin K, which supports the production of specialized fats that form the myelin sheath, protecting nerve fibers from degradation. And it contains vitamin E, one of the most powerful fat-soluble antioxidants available through diet, which protects the brain's fatty cell membranes from oxidative damage at precisely the time during sleep when repair is most active and the stakes of protection are highest. Cooked spinach is preferable to raw because the cooking process breaks down compounds that otherwise bind to minerals in the gut and prevent their absorption. A generous serving with dinner, cooked, is one of the single most impactful dietary choices any person over 60 can make for their long-term cognitive future. The fifth food is mackerel. If sardines are the reliable, consistent workhorse of brain nutrition, mackerel is the high-performance version, richer in omega-3 fatty acids per gram than almost any other commonly available food on Earth, with a fatty acid profile that aligns almost perfectly with what the aging brain needs during its nightly repair cycles. The DHA and EPA in mackerel do not simply support brain cell membrane flexibility and integrity, they also exert direct anti-inflammatory effects within the brain tissue itself, specifically suppressing the activity of microglial cells, the brain's resident immune cells, when they become overactivated and begin damaging the very tissue they exist to protect. Chronic microglial overactivation is increasingly recognized by researchers as one of the primary drivers of age-related cognitive decline, because once these cells enter a sustained inflammatory state, they begin releasing compounds that accelerate neuronal damage in a self-reinforcing cycle. The omega-3s in mackerel interrupt that cycle and help restore appropriate immune calibration inside the brain. Mackerel also powerfully supports memory function through its effects on brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a compound sometimes described as fertilizer for neurons because of the way it promotes growth of new neural connections, maintains existing ones, and drives the physical remodeling of brain structure in response to learning and experience. Adequate omega-3 fatty acid intake is one of the most reliable dietary predictors of healthy levels of this compound in older adults. 1 to 2 servings of mackerel per week, rotating alongside regular sardine consumption, gives the brain a consistent and abundant supply of the essential fatty acids it needs in their most bioavailable and immediately usable form. Now, here is the part that changes everything you've just learned, and this is the part most people miss entirely, even when they know about individual foods. These 5 foods do not work as isolated, independent interventions that can be swapped in and out randomly. They work as an integrated, synergistic system, and the sum of that system is something genuinely extraordinary that none of the individual foods can replicate alone. Sardines and mackerel together are rebuilding and maintaining the structural integrity of brain cell membranes while simultaneously reducing the neuroinflammation that disrupts sleep and degrades neurons. Avocado is improving cerebral blood flow and supporting the neurotransmitter balance that governs both mood and memory encoding. Walnuts are activating the mitophagy process that clears out damaged mitochondria and restores the cellular energy production that powers every other repair mechanism. Spinach is further optimizing blood flow through nitrate conversion while using magnesium to deepen the quality of sleep, inside which all of this repair actually happens, and simultaneously protecting the results of that repair with vitamins K and E. Each food addresses a completely different layer of the same fundamental problem. Together, they create conditions in which the brain can do what it is always trying to do: heal itself, rebuild itself, and remember better in the morning than it did the night before. Timing matters in a way that almost nobody talks about openly. Eating these foods randomly and inconsistently throughout the week produces some incremental benefit over time. But eating them deliberately and consistently in the hours before sleep produces something categorically different, something more targeted and more powerful than casual consumption could ever achieve. When sardines, mackerel, avocado, walnuts, and spinach are part of your evening meal, you are loading your bloodstream with exactly the nutrients the glymphatic system and the memory consolidation process will need at peak demand during the hours that immediately follow. You are not asking your body to store these nutrients somewhere and retrieve them at the right moment later. You are delivering them precisely when the biological need for them is about to reach its highest point of the entire day. Nutrient timing has been shown to meaningfully affect both the bioavailability and the actual utilization of these compounds in the body. And for an aging system with compromised absorption capacity, every optimization stacks meaningfully on top of the last. Consider what this means practically. A dinner built around even 2 or 3 of these foods, say mackerel with a generous portion of cooked spinach and half an avocado alongside, creates an internal environment inside the brain that is measurably different from one built around processed foods, refined carbohydrates, or low-quality fats. The fatty acid composition of your blood changes within hours of eating. The availability of folate and magnesium in neural tissue shifts. The inflammatory signaling molecules circulating near your neurons respond within the same night. This is not a process that takes months to begin working. The effects are immediate at the biochemical level, and they compound progressively with every consistent evening that follows. The person who eats this way 3 nights a week is building a different brain than the person who doesn't, measurably, structurally, functionally different over the course of a single season. And the person who does it 5 or 6 nights a week is building something more resilient still. The consistency is where the real transformation lives. One good dinner is a single note. A consistent pattern of good dinners is the entire song, played night after night, slowly rewriting the biology of an aging brain in the direction of clarity rather than fog, memory rather than forgetting, function rather than slow and silent decline. No supplement can replicate what these whole foods provide when consumed together as a coherent nutritional pattern. This is not an argument against supplements across the board. Some have genuine value in specific circumstances, but the layered combinations of compounds in whole foods, the synergistic interactions between different fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, polyphenols, and bioactive molecules that evolve together in these foods over millions of years cannot be captured in any capsule or powder. The fiber in spinach changes how its nutrients are absorbed through the gut lining. The fat in avocado and sardines changes how fat-soluble vitamins from spinach are taken up and transported. The polyphenols in walnuts interact with the gut microbiome in ways that produce entirely new brain protective compounds that didn't exist in the food before it was eaten. These cascading interactions are what the research is actually capturing when it finds these foods to be so consistently and powerfully effective. An isolated DHA supplement is not the same as sardines or mackerel consumed as whole food. A synthetic folate tablet is not the same as half an avocado with a plate of cooked spinach. The whole system is dramatically more powerful than the sum of its separated parts. Brain decline is not written in your genes. It is not a predetermined sentence handed down by heredity. It is not something that simply happens to people when they reach a certain age, the way hairlines recede or joints stiffen. The research on dietary intervention and cognitive aging is clear and consistent. The brain remains profoundly responsive to nutritional input well into old age, far later than most people ever believe possible. People in their 70s and 80s who deliberately adopt diets rich in the nutrients these 5 foods provide show measurable improvements in cognitive performance, in sleep architecture, in inflammatory markers, and in the structural integrity of brain tissue visible on imaging. Not theoretical improvements, not hopeful projections, real, measurable, documented improvements reported in the actual daily experience of sharper memory, faster thinking, and clearer mental energy every single morning. The brain is always trying to repair itself. That is what it has always been designed to do. Every night while you sleep, it marshals every resource available to it to push back against the damage of the day, to consolidate everything you learned, to flush out every toxin it can reach, and to restore the neural connections that allow you to wake up feeling like a complete, capable, present version of yourself. All it has ever been asking for is the right raw materials to do the job properly. And the decision about whether those materials arrive or not happens at the dinner table, in the quiet hours before sleep, in choices that most people make every single day without ever once realizing how profoundly much is riding on them. Think about that for a moment. Every single evening of your life, you have been making a decision that directly determines how well your brain repairs itself while you sleep. Most people make that decision unconsciously, reaching for whatever is convenient or familiar without any awareness of the biological consequences that follow. But you are no longer most people. You now understand what is actually happening inside your brain during those dark, quiet hours. You know what the glymphatic system needs to run at full capacity. You know what it requires to clear out the cellular debris that accumulates with age. You know which specific foods provide the structural fats, the protective vitamins, the anti-inflammatory compounds, and the sleep-deepening minerals that make the difference between a brain that slowly declines and one that actively fights back night after night after night. What you eat tonight determines how well your brain heals while you sleep. That is not a marketing slogan or a dramatic overstatement. That is verified, documented, reproducible biology. And now that you understand it, truly understand it, from the glymphatic system to the mitochondria, to the neurotransmitters, to the myelin sheath protecting every nerve fiber in your brain, you cannot unknow it. The knowledge is yours permanently. The only question that remains, the one that only you can answer starting right now at the very next meal, is simply this: what are you going to have for dinner?